So today we're going to talk about cooking one of the best meals that I've ever had off the grill. Recently I purchased a Traeger pellet grill, and this is only the third meal that I've cooked on it. And I did some research and never cooked a tri-tip before, but it's really simple using this grill, and it is one of my new favorite things to eat. Stay tuned. My name is John. Welcome to my channel. This channel is about outdoor adventure, cooking, good times with friends, hunting, camping, RVing, and everything in between. So if you're into any of that, like and subscribe, and I'll share content as I'm able. I am a meat eater, a big fan of beef, a big fan of chicken, pork, and I love grilled food. I love eating it at restaurants. And beef is probably my favorite thing. Steak is probably my favorite thing. With that being said, I've never cooked a tri-tip before. And so I've done some research on the internet, looked at recipes, and finally bit the bullet and bought a Traeger pellet grill. So I came across a recipe also for a couple of different ways to cook a tri-tip. And so for me being new to this, I just kept it simple, and I kind of cooked it kind of like a steak, kind of like prime rib, but really in between. Cooking on a Traeger's insanely simple as long as you follow the directions. It comes with meat probes and a temperature setting where you can check the temperature, and it's almost idiot proof. So with that being said, let's talk about the meal we had. We had smoked grilled tri-tip, we had grilled asparagus, we had baked potatoes, and we had Mexican street corn. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to prepare the tri-tip. So I went the day of and bought the tri-tip from the grocery store that morning, and I wanted to get a fresh cut. This is something that you can probably get frozen, but with me kind of planning this out to cook this on a Saturday, I just wanted to get everything that morning and then prep it and then be ready to go. For some recipes, you have to marinate it overnight, so you may want to grab it the day before, but for me, I'm just going to cook this really, really simple. So you take your tri-tip, you let it get as close to room temperature as possible. The first thing you're going to do, get your tri-tip out, put it in a pan, and season it really heavily. I use steak seasoning. In Texas, we have a grocery store chain called H-E-B, and it's got to be one of the best grocery store chains in the world. You can find anything at the H-E-B. They have a great steak seasoning that I use for just about everything. So I coated both sides of the tri-tip and pretty much every outer layer of the tri-tip really heavily with the steak seasoning. And what I want to do is make a crust. So using a Traeger, you're not going to be able to sear it the way that you would with a gas grill or a charcoal grill, but there's a method called reverse sear, which we'll get into in just a second. So the first thing I did, I set my Traeger to like 225, and cooking this is you want to kind of warm the internal temp up slow, but you don't want to get past 130, 135 for an internal temp, because then you'll start getting, you'll lose the flavor and the meat will get tougher. And if that's the way you want to cook it, that's great. But if it's me, if it goes past 125, 130, it's going to hurt my feelings and it's not going to taste well. Anyway, got our grill ready, got the tri-tip on, got it going. I went ahead and threw the potatoes on with it because it takes them a long time to cook. So we got a Traeger Jennin. I used oak pellets in the Traeger. I also bought a bag of the signature pellets, but I wanted a little bit stronger smoky flavor. So I filled the hopper with the oak pellets, got the temperature set to 225, put the tri-tip on, put the meat probe in, and then you just wait, pay attention to it. The great thing about a pellet grill and the great thing about a Traeger is you don't have to babysit it. If you use a timer, you use the meat probe, you can multitask and do other things while it's cooking. So checked on a little bit later, watching the internal temp. When it gets up to around 115, 120, I pull the tri-tip off and wrap it in foil and put it in a cooler. The reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to go back after it's had a chance to sit for a minute. I'm going to go back and then I'm going to sear it and make sure that I lock that outer crust in. So after putting the tri-tip in the cooler, I switched over to the gas grill, and that's when I put the asparagus and the corn on. Now for both of these, we'll do the asparagus first because it's really simple. You get your asparagus, you wash it, you try to pat it dry, you coat it with olive oil, and then sprinkle it with steak seasoning. That's it. That's all I do with my asparagus. The next was the Mexican street corn. That's a little bit more difficult, and I'll get into that in a second. But to get the corn started, put olive oil on the outside of it, cut your grill up on really high heat, and you want to put the corn on there so you can cook it, but also you want to leave the corn on the cob on there so you can get a little bit of a char on the outside. So I have both of these going. Only takes a little while for the asparagus. You only cook it until it gets chewy or a little mushy. And so after turning it and kind of rolling it over a couple times to make sure it's evenly cooked, you pull that off. As the corn's going, when you start to see a little bit of color, a little bit of brown and a little bit of charred ends, that's when you want to pay attention to it and start pulling it off. The corn's done when it's, the kernels are soft to the touch and then juice is kind of coming out. So while this was cooking, I had my wife help me and prepare the sauce for the Mexican street corn. Really easy. You'll take like a 1/4 cup of mayonnaise, 1 lemon, juiced and then zested, and then you mix that together. And you also add a little bit of cayenne pepper. You also want just a little bit of cilantro for the topping, and then also you're going to want some chili powder. So to make the sauce, you take 1/4 cup of mayonnaise, about a 1/4 cup of sour cream, 1 to 1.5 limes juiced and zested, and you're going to mix that up and set it aside in the refrigerator. You also want to grab some queso fresco or some cotija cheese. You can find those probably near the cheese counter or part of the cheese section of the grocery store. You have to really look for that because it's a specialty kind of Mexican cheese, and you can use something else, but it's not going to be the same unless you use cotija cheese. If you can't find that, then look for queso fresco and then grate it really fine. But if you try to use just cheese in a bag or something, it's not going to be the same. You're going to be disappointed. So when the corn's done, most people take corn on the cob and then they put the sauce on it and then sprinkle it with cheese and then dash the chili powder on top, sprinkle it with cilantro. In our case, we had done that a couple of times before. It's easier for us just to cut the corn off of the cob and then put the sauce on top and then prepare it the same way, just on a plate. So with all of this done, I'm going to switch my attention back to the tri-tip. And so to get the finishing touches off of the tri-tip, I take it out of the cooler, take the tin foil off of it. I'm going to cut my gas grill up on the high setting that it can go and let it get hot. I sprayed the grates with vegetable oil or cooking oil, so the meat wouldn't stick to the grates. But I got it really hot, and so with that, take the tri-tip and put it on the grill grates for 1-2 minutes on each side, and then I pull it off. Take it inside, let it rest for 5-10 minutes, and then slice it, and that's it. This is some of the best beef I've had in a very long time. So extremely easy to cook, extremely easy to prepare, and also it is a little bit expensive, but there's enough in it where you can probably get 2 meals out of it. So we ate grilled tri-tip one day, and then the next day we warmed the leftovers up in the oven and then had carne asada tacos also. That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, give me that like and subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Have a great day.